A guy outside Sacramento heard his state might ban so-called assault-style rifles by spring. He panic-bought a used AR for double the going rate, full background check, full weight. He never found out he could have bought a qualifying antique-exempt revolver without the usual federal transfer process for less than his transfer fee. That should tell you something. 6 firearms exist right now that can qualify for a federal antique exemption, meaning no FFL transfer or NICS check under federal law. Is that actually legal, or some gray market trick? Federal law, codified in 1968, older than most of the guns we're about to cover. But which of these 6 is a genuine addition to your family's plan, and which one is a wall hanger dressed up as a defense gun? Most people rank it backwards. The one everybody assumes is the smartest buy, the real genuine antique, we're ranking 4th from the bottom. The one most guys scroll past without a second look takes the top spot. Quick ground rule, and it actually matters. Everything on this list sits under one federal exemption, the same one that's been on the books since the Gun Control Act of 1968. It's not a workaround. It's not a gray zone your dealer whispers about. It's black-letter law, but a handful of states layer their own rules on top of it, and 2 are worth naming specifically. New Jersey classifies black powder handguns as firearms outright. Same permit, same background check, same paperwork as any modern pistol, federal exemption or not. New York does something close to it, folding black powder revolvers into its regular pistol licensing scheme, even though ATF doesn't touch them at the federal level. A handful of other states add their own transport or storage rules on top of that. We'll flag it item by item, but check your own state code before you order anything on this list. That's not a disclaimer tacked on to cover a lawyer. That's the difference between owning a legal gun and driving home with an illegal one. Here's the part almost nobody explains correctly. ATF doesn't care that these guns look like something your great-grandfather carried, doesn't care that the finish is case-hardened steel, or the grip is walnut. For the muzzleloaders on this list, the key question is whether the gun can fire modern, self-contained ammunition, primer, powder, bullet, all built into one case straight out of the box? If the answer is no, if you have to pour loose powder down each chamber, seat a lead ball, and cap a nipple one at a time, federal law calls it an antique. Doesn't matter if it left an Italian factory 6 weeks ago. People call that a loophole. It isn't. It's a bright line drawn around ignition method, not age. And once you understand exactly where that line sits, you'll understand exactly why one of the 6 guns on this list can turn into a federal problem, depending on what you buy right alongside it. And there's a reason before states ban them isn't just a title trying to grab you. Maryland already moved. On the ground, people call it Shaday's Law. It keeps the antique exemption in place for law-abiding buyers, but strips it from anyone with a violent felony record. Reasonable-sounding model. Also, exactly the kind of model other legislatures copy first and widen later, especially heading into next year's 250th anniversary reenactment season, when more of these guns are crossing state lines than at any point in decades, and more state legislators are suddenly paying attention to a category they used to ignore entirely. The door isn't closed. This is just the first time in a while anyone's had a hand on the handle. Start at the bottom, because it deserves to be there. The black powder pocket derringer. Most run .3 to 1 or .3 to 6 caliber, single or double barrel, some in a tiny 5-shot pepperbox pattern. Price runs $150 to $250 depending on finish. It fits a jacket pocket. That's the entire pitch. Here's what the pitch skips. A .3 to 1 caliber round ball leaves the barrel around 500 feet per second, carrying maybe 40 to 50 foot-pounds of energy, less than plenty of air rifles sold at a hardware store. And reloading it under stress isn't slow. It's not happening at all. No chamber swap on most of these, no spare cylinder trick. You get one shot, maybe 2, and then you're standing there with an empty pocket pistol and a powder flask in the dark. The objection, and it's fair, concealment matters, and this thing disappears into a coat pocket better than anything else on the list. True, nobody's arguing that. But concealment that can't back itself up past the first squeeze isn't concealment. It's theater. Buy it if you collect. Buy it for a reenactment kit. Don't buy it thinking it replaces a real backup gun. It doesn't have the energy or the second shot to earn that job. Move up one slot, and the gun gets more famous, not more useful. The Uberti 1851 Navy Point .3-6 caliber, 6-shot, the pattern Colt sold before the Civil War and Hollywood never let go of. It's the gun in half the westerns you grew up on. That reputation is real. The stopping power behind it isn't what the reputation implies. A .3-6 round ball, typical charge, runs somewhere around 130 to 150 foot-pounds at the muzzle. Compare that to the .4-4 caliber guns, further up this list, closer to 200, sometimes more, depending on charge and ball weight. That gap matters. It's the difference between a gun built to stop a man in 1851 and a gun built to look good doing it in front of a camera in 2026. The grip frame is smaller, too, built for a lighter hand, lighter recoil, a formal duel or a card table dispute. Not a home invasion at 3 in the morning when your hands are shaking and your grip needs to be dead certain. The objection people raise: it's a proven design, carried by more soldiers and lawmen than almost any handgun in history. Sure, proven against 1850s threats with 1850s expectations. That earned it a place in your display case. It didn't earn it a place in your nightstand. Now here's the one that breaks the pattern everybody expects, and it's exactly why we put it here instead of at the top. A genuine pre-1899 cartridge revolver, say a real Colt single-action army, or a Smith & Wesson top break, actually manufactured in or before 1898. Chambered for a period cartridge like .4-4 Russian or .3-8 long Colt. This one is exempt too, not for the reason the other 5 are. Remember the bright line ignition method, not age? This gun breaks that rule entirely. It fires a modern-style, self-contained cartridge, same as the pistol in your holster right now. It's exempt purely because of when it rolled off the factory floor. Manufacture date, full stop. That's the second federal exemption, and most gun owners have never heard of it, because most gun owners have never needed to. Sounds like the ultimate answer, doesn't it? Genuine steel, no compromise, fires like a real cartridge gun because it is one. Here's the reversal. A shootable example, provenance actually verified against factory shipping records, usually runs $1,500 to $4,000 or more, and that's before you find ammunition. .4-4 Russian, .3-8 S&W. Some of the old top-break chambering's production is a fraction of what it used to be. Boutique loads only, sometimes special order, sometimes months out. Verifying the manufacture date itself takes real work, serial number ranges, factory letters, a collector, or an FFL who actually knows the platform. Because the guy at the gun show said it's pre-1899 isn't a legal defense if he's wrong. And you're firing a cylinder and frame that's more than 130 years old with modern smokeless pressure if you're not extremely careful about which loads you choose. Crack a cylinder on a gun like that and you're not out $200. You're out your grandfather's rifle money. Genuine beats replica on paper every single time. In the room where you actually need 6 rounds to go bang without hesitation, genuine loses to a $200 Italian reproduction, built to be used, not preserved. Buy the antique because you love history. Don't buy it because you assume old automatically means better. That assumption costs more than the gun. Clears throat. Quick pause here, because this is usually where people stop paying attention and assume they already know how the list ends. If you're tired of buying gear off a spec sheet or a reputation, then finding out the hard part was never printed on either one, that's what this channel tests every week. Stick around, because the next 2 guns are where this list actually gets decided. Back to the replicas, and back to guns built to actually get shot. The Pieta 1858 Remington New Army, .4-4 caliber, the single most popular reproduction on the market, and there's a reason beyond nostalgia. Price runs $220 to $320, depending on finish. Ships direct. No FFL. Same as everything else here. The .4-4 ball carries real energy north of 200 foot-pounds at the muzzle with a full 30-grain charge. Comparable to some low-pressure point, 3 to 8 special loads you'd actually trust your life to. That's not a toy number. And the top strap frame on the Remington pattern is stronger and stiffer than the open-top Colt patterns. which matters more than it sounds when you're running full charges through it, weekend after weekend, year after year. Here's the part that actually changes how you'd carry this thing. The cylinder comes out. Loosen one wedge pin, and the whole loaded cylinder drops free. Carry 2 or 3 spares, preloaded and capped, in a pouch, and your reload isn't pouring powder down. 6 chambers under stress. It's a 15-second cylinder swap. No different in concept from dropping a magazine. The objection, and it's the right one to raise, you're still capped at whatever you're carrying, and you're never matching a modern semi-auto's reload speed no matter how many spare cylinders you're packing. Correct. Nobody on this list wins that fight. But you weren't buying this to win a speed contest. You were buying 6 rounds of real stopping power in a gun that ships to your door this week for less than dinner and a hotel room. As a baseline, that's a genuinely sound buy. It's just not the best one on this list. Now for the part that can turn a completely legal purchase into a federal problem. And this is where the advice from most gun counter clerks stops being useful. Remember that Remington 1858, you just bought the black powder, cap and nipple version. Fully exempt, fully legal. Companies like Kirst and R&D sell drop-in conversion cylinders that let that exact frame fire modern self-contained cartridges .4 to 5 Colt, .3 to 8, special, .4 to 4 special, depending on the model. Suddenly, your muzzleloader loads like a real revolver. By itself, that conversion cylinder is just a spare part, not a firearm, no paperwork, ships to your door. By itself, the black powder frame is an antique. Also, no paperwork. Put the two together, own both, own a frame that will physically accept a cartridge cylinder, and you've built something that can fire fixed ammunition. That's the exact mechanical fact that defines a regulated firearm under the antique exemption we just spent 10 minutes explaining. ATF has treated that combination as no longer meeting the exemption in past guidance, and California goes further, treating the conversion itself as reclassifying the whole gun under state law, even if you still own the original cylinder. The honest answer is the rules around exactly when and how that gets triggered are murkier than almost anything else on this list. That's not me hedging. That's the actual state of the guidance, and anyone who tells you it's simple hasn't read it. The safe assumption is simple. Once you introduce a conversion cylinder, don't assume the antique exemption still applies. The advantage is real. That conversion cylinder turns a $260 muzzleloader into a gun that shoots off-the-shelf .4 to 5 Colt. But that advantage sits on the one piece of this entire list that isn't a clean, bright line. Everything else here, you order it and you're done. This one, you check first. And that brings us to the one most people scroll straight past, because it doesn't have a famous name attached the way the Navy does. And it doesn't have a controversy attached the way the conversion cylinder does. The 1860 Colt Army, .4 to 4 caliber, bigger frame than the 1851 Navy, same open-top Colt design, but built around a longer cylinder that holds a heavier powder charge, up to 40 grains compared to the Navy's 20 to 25. More charge, more ball velocity, more energy on target. This is the pattern the Army actually issued during the Civil War, in the middle of the deadliest conflict on American soil to that point, because the smaller Navy pattern wasn't getting the job done. Same cylinder swap reload trick as the Remington, same 6 rounds of real .4 to 4 energy, but a larger grip frame than either the Navy or the pocket pieces, better retention, better control, less muzzle flip when your hands aren't steady, which they won't be if you're ever actually using this for real. Price runs $280 to $400 depending on finish and brand. It can qualify for the federal antique exemption, but state law still matters. Here's the objection, and it's the strongest one on the whole list, so let's take it head on. A 6-shot muzzleloader is hopelessly outclassed by a modern striker-fired 9 reload speed, capacity, all of it, correct. Nobody's arguing a cap-and-ball revolver replaces your carry gun or your bedside gun. That was never the actual question. The actual question is, what you can add to your plan this month before your state closes this path, without a background check, without a waiting period, without competing for shelf space during the next ammo panic, because loose powder, round ball, and percussion caps are made by different manufacturers, sold through different supply chains, and they don't disappear off the shelf the same week. 9mm does. That's not a backup gun that duplicates what's already in your safe. That's a backup gun that fails differently than everything else you own. Different supply chain, different legal category, different failure points entirely. In an actual supply disruption, that's not a redundant gun. That's the one gun in your collection a shortage on centerfire primers can't touch. So go back to that guy outside Sacramento. He wasn't wrong to worry about his state closing a door. He was wrong about which door was actually open. He spent double retail and sat through a background check on a rifle he was scared he'd lose access to, and never once looked at 6 guns sitting under a federal antique exemption. That's held for almost 60 years outside the federal assault weapons debate, because it was never built around what a gun looks like. It was built around how it loads. The myth was that no background check means shady or means a toy. It means neither. Congress drew a line in 1968 around ignition method, and that line still holds. Most guys get the ranking backwards. They assume the genuine antique is the smart buy, and the reproduction is the compromise. It's the other way around. The genuine antique is the one you, baby. The 1860 Army is the one you can actually trust to go bang, reload fast, and keep working when the supply chain everyone else depends on gets tight. Buy the reproduction. Save the genuine antique for when the rest of your plan is already handled. And if you want the next piece of this, how to actually source powder, ball, and caps before a run happens, not after. That video's linked next. Go watch it before you need it, not after.